of course, my name is Martin Seelye, and I was born in this area, born in Glens Falls in 1949, and went to Queensbury School, graduated from Queensbury High School, and went in the Navy, did my time in the Navy, and got out of the Navy and joined the family auction business, and worked with my parents in the auction business. And they retired in '76, and I took the business over and ran until December 2000, at which time I decided it was time to semi-retire. And so I shut that business down, let 26 people go home, and semi-retired, and continued doing antique and furniture restoration, stripping, repairs, refinishing, along with eBay sales. And then this past April, completely liquidated the shop and retired.
So I'm Corlis, and last name Carroll. That's the name I was given at birth.
My name is Bob Bayle, born and raised here in Glens Falls. Lived here most of my life, except for 5 years, and spent teaching in Albany. Okay, my family came to Glens Falls in about the 1870s. I taught in Glens Falls. After my first 5 years in Albany, I taught in Glens Falls schools for 33 years, 37 altogether.
My father, he worked, you name it, and he did it. He worked at a paper mill. He worked at a couple paper mills. He did logging, and he sold filler brush. He sold Avon products, which was unheard of, but he sold Avon products. He sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, and he worked at and ran a gas station. He owned and operated Tasty Freeze, a soft ice cream store in the summer. He bought, in the summertime, he bought, this is over a period of number of years, he bought pastries from a bakery in South Glens Falls, and delivered them to the campsites in Lake George and up the lake in the summertime. And the list just goes on and on.
My dad was an engineer, mechanical engineer. He went to Cornell, and he worked in Boston for a while and then came back here because my grandfather at that time had gotten out of the mercantile business. After leaving the Boston store, he went to work in Worcester, Massachusetts for a store there, and then he got a job in New York City for a big department store there, and he retired in 1902. And they came back to Glens Falls and lived down on Warren Street, let's see, and then it was 1905 or 6, he became president of the Glens Falls Cement Company. That's where my father went to work as an engineer. That's pretty much it. And my father, he stayed there for 40 years. It was going to be a temporary job at first, 6 months, because they needed the extra help. 40 years later, he retired.
Then we have another Seelye, Lemuel Seelye. About 1870, he purchased 200 acres of land at the Garrison grounds, actually opposite where the present Garrison restaurant is. And he built a hotel there called Fort George Hotel, which could house 400 guests, lit by gas, had both hot and cold running water. This is 1870, and had also a telegraph office. Then it was destroyed by fire in 1888. And also, Lemuel was known as LCP Seelye, and he was a lumberman and was living at 30 Elm Street in Glens Falls in 1874. And I happen to have his log mark. All the logs, of course, before they were put in the river, they were marked on the end with a log hammer, and I have his log mark. And all the log marks, of course, are in a book. The insignia and the signature of the owner are in a book at the Queensbury Town office building.
And that is Jacob Hart Sellingham, and he worked for the Finch Prime people, and I was told by my mom that he was a one-armed paper hanger. We've all heard that phrase before, one-armed paper hanger, but the truth of the matter is, as I was told, he lost an arm in an accident there. And that was back in the day where you just didn't they took care of people, right? They took care of people. And so the Hyde sisters, right, who were related to the Finch Prime people, gave him a job, and he was the caretaker for their property. So if they needed wallpapering done, he was their one-armed paper hanger.
One of the Seelys who was what I consider kind of important in the area, Reuben Seelye, was a stonemason, an entrepreneur, and in 1812 he bought a large tract of land on French Mountain, and he was a successful builder and lumberman, and at that time had as many as 60 teams of horses carrying lumber between Queensbury and Albany. And he built a large stone building in Lake George Village, which is still standing on Canada Street, which previously was the post office. And now it is or after that it was the Japanese bazaar.
His youngest son works at the cement company, believe it or not. He's been there quite a few years now. Yeah, and I worked there for a few years when I was in college. It started as kind of a fluke because when I was in high school, I lived on Ninth Street, and the next street over was Woodard, and at the end of Woodard Street there was a place, was Ray's Beverage Company. Okay, it was owned by Ray Pezzi, and I kind of knew Ray from being in the neighborhood. So I think I was a junior, and it must have been junior, I just turned 16, and I got a job working with Ray, 75 cents an hour. And anyway, that lasted like the summer of my twin sophomore and junior, and between junior and senior. And then before I went to college, I went back there, and I was probably there about 2 weeks. And my dad came home from work one noontime, and he said, would you be interested in working at the cement company for the summer? I said, what would I be doing? He said, well, you'd be the chauffeur. I said, what do you mean the chauffeur? He said, well, our chauffeur just had a heart attack, and he's not going to be able to work. So he said, we need somebody to fill in, and they think he'll probably be back by the end of summer, so just want somebody for the next couple of months. I said, what do I have to do? He said, well, you need a chauffeur's license. Okay, so I went and got a chauffeur's license, told Ray I was going to leave. He put on the show, but it's the way it goes. And I went down to the cement company for $1.50 an hour. Well, at the time, they brought their president and the superintendent, and I think it was one of their accountants. They gave them a ride back and forth to work. And you also had to get the mail, and that was my job, go up and get the mail, bring it back down, go through it, make sure the right office got it. And this one I really got the kick out of. They had a bridge over the river because their quarry is on the opposite side of the river from the plant. So at that time there was a railroad bridge across there. And every day I had to go out there at 10 o'clock in the morning and drop this plumb line down to see how far below the bridge the water was. The only reason I was ever given was, well, in case there's ever a flood.